Good afternoon, create, connect people, and hello world. I am now not live, but I am now on Zoom with Tammy Valliers after a long trial and error and failure of getting to live situation. So this is the recording that we're going to use, and it's going to be an amazing hour. So Tammy, this is Tammy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Pardon?
What's a little background about you, and how do you start your classes?
Well, a little bit about me is I'm a hero intelligence teacher, mentor, author, and coach. I help people grow their hero and awaken their brilliance. And one thing that I do in my area of expertise is I developed a program called Kindergarten Masterclass. And it's an amazing program. It is a program where it's 50 minutes. And in that 50 minutes, children learn to discover their genius, their superpowers, and they learn how to connect and basically form incredible partnerships and leadership within that group and context. And the way I start to do that is with my little bell. So I like to start on a fresh page with them. I invite them to sit down, to be still, and to center. And I start with this little bell.
And what happens when that happens?
What happens is as soon as I ring that bell, within 2 seconds, the entire little kindergartens, it doesn't matter if it's 25, 27, 33, every single one of them are still and silent. And they're very motivated and driven to be little master teachers. So that's the incentive behind it. I say, who wants to be my master teacher? And because I open with, we are all students, we are all teachers. And I really do invite the opportunity for them to teach me and to teach one another, as well as me teaching them. It's a partnership, and it's a relationship that we establish, and a language that we establish in that 15-minute period. And a lot of times what I'll do, a secondary thing I'll start with, is I always start with an I am card. So it's a level of stepping into our brilliance and really owning, you know, the direction of where we're going to go, because I like to be creative in my lesson plans. I like the universe or the mystery of life to engage with us and create learning experiences for us. So I'll start with a card, and I start shuffling, and I always say, we don't pick the card picks us. So I'll keep shuffling until a card jumps out. And so you can see this one here is calling our spirit to read it. And this one says, oh, I love it. It says, I am potential. And you can see it's a little girl in the ocean, and she's swimming. And it says, I go with the flow to expand my horizons.
Just like we did today.
We did. We just, you know what? We went with the flow, Charlotte. I mean, technology can be frustrating. It could be exhausting, especially if it's not your genius or superpowers. But you know what? It's like life. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be things that come in our way, but we just move around them, and we just find a different way. And that was the big lesson here, is you didn't just give up and say, you know what, let's just not do the interview. We found a different pathway, and we found a different way. And I think that's what we're here to teach people, especially in times of uncertainty, right? The whole concept isn't, life isn't always going to go the way we want it, but when it does throw us a curveball, and when it does give us these hiccups, what do we do? How to react, and how do we show up? So those are the really important lessons, and I think that's what's supposed to come into this conversation today, and to what people are supposed to hear in this interview and between us in this conversation.
That's creativity as well, when you're finding solutions in situations where there's pressure. So it's it was an example.
Perfect example.
Yeah. Right. Shall we go into the questions? Have you got anything else to add about your history, where you come from, what you're doing? You said pretty good things about it.
Sure. So a little bit about me, background history, to just give everybody a little peek in. So I struggled with the school system quite a bit when I was younger. I would say I'm on the dyslexic spectrum, and so I'm very strong in the visual arts and language and things like that, but I'm not great in math and science, and I'm not a linear learner. I have to see the big picture before I understand all the parts, and most teachers would teach in details, and so I didn't really understand the concepts or lessons until the end of the lesson, and then I got it, and by that time I missed a lot. So I never really found my genius and superpowers until, I would say, college, when I started and I found psychology. And I had taken my course in psych, and then my professor said, "Oh my God, could you tutor? You're like 98. I'm like, "Me? Like, don't you realize?" Didn't realize I was brilliant. I was just brilliant in a subject I hadn't really been exposed to. So psychology is something I absolutely love. And my multiple intelligence is existential, which means I love the study of life. And I love and very curious about life and everything about learning about how life works, and master teachers and personal growth and development. And so when I started to really hone in on this is what my gift and genius is, learning happened fast, and learning happened at rapid speed, and the connections were just going crazy. So when I could start to navigate that path, and I started to realize this is what I'm good at, and I'm also an intuitive empath, so I'm very good at detecting people's energy. And so the other area of strength I am good in schools with is social and emotional wellness. So that's what I started to focus my time and energy on. Instead of trying to stay in areas that I wasn't good in, I really navigated areas to move towards what were my strengths, and aligning myself with people or projects that could support my brilliance and genius.
Yeah, that's great. So you found yourself in this great situation where you've created a whole empire of finding your own hero, which is amazing. So we're going to go into that now. This question is a very important question, so take care to answer it with your heart. What is your dream, your life purpose and mission in your life?
So my dream in my heart is to create heaven here on earth. And I know that sounds like a big dream, but ultimately when I was talking to you about kindergarten masterclass, that's literally what I have created, is this classroom transformation, this utopiary little world where there's all these little people and these amazing personalities, and they're all getting along with one another. They're all interconnecting, and it's peaceful, and they work together as a team and a unity, and they're kind and they're loving and they're cooperative, and it's peaceful and it's harmonious, and it's like this little utopiary world. And in 20 years of teaching, I've never witnessed anything like it. But I do this 3 times in 3 different classrooms, and I teach over 80 kindergarten children, and I keep getting the exact same result. And it's because there are tools, resources, and there is a roadmap to getting them that way. And the piece, it's no different when you listen to Cesar Malone, right? And he's the dog whisperer or the horse whisperer. They have an approach, number one, and they have an ideology of how they create that. You think about the police academy dogs or hearing aid dogs, right? Those dogs from babies are trained. They are cultivated, right? And they're and all with love. And they look at those animals as partners, right? They don't use force, they don't use aggression. And when you create that, you create these powerful bonds that happen. And then literally a blind person could manage a whole room of seeing eye dogs, right? Because those dogs are so well behaved, so disciplined. They know how to listen on command that a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old could get control of that environment. So my whole goal with Kindergarten Masterclass is to help create that environment, cultivate those conditions. A 5-year-old or a 6-year-old can navigate the entire classroom. So I'm building leadership, which, what does that do to the child's self-esteem, self-worth, and value?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So the next question is about creativity. What is creativity to you, and why do you think it's so important to nurture it in everyone?
So I love this question because I went on a walk and I really went inward, and I thought, what is creativity to me? And I am a very creative person. And it's sometimes, you know, if you ask that to 100 different people, 100 different people would give you a different answer. But for me, I see creativity in doing something like picking up a rock, for example. If you pick up a rock and thinking of 100 ways you can use that rock, to me, that is ultimately creativity. So for example, I met a little boy and he was on the park and he's like, I'm bored. And I said, really? So I picked up a rock and I said, I wonder what you could do with just this rock. So I held it in my hand and I said, if I'm holding the rock, this is the speaking stone, I get to be the speaker. But if you hold the rock, you're the speaker. And then I said, I wonder what we could do with this next. And I drew in a message in the sand. And then I held it up and I said, what do you think you could do? And I passed him the stone and he said, well, I could skip this stone. I said, exactly. And then he gave it back to me and I said, well, I could make a pet rock out of this and I could give it a name, and I could make a rock garden, and I could make a movie out of this rock and with this rock, and I could do a painted rock, and I could have this rock go on an adventure with me. And it was this game of, you know, what we could do with this rock. And we could do paint, like an artwork, right? Where we dipped the rock in paint and we created this rock. But there's so many things, like we could make a story out of this rock, right? Like we could make a bed for this rock and we could, like, our pet rock. So the concept is, instead of trying to think of, you know, 15 different creative ways, how about if we take one object, one thing, one topic, and we stretched our imagination? Mm-hmm. To me, that's what creativity is. If you take a ball and finding 100 ways to use that ball, that, what it does is it forces you, number one, to be creative, number two, how to use your imagination, and number three, once you start to do that, you're never bored. You never become bored. And it's what, like, Dr. Lance was talking, the difference between schooling and education. If we educated children to think like that and to be more creative, they could take absolutely anything, go anywhere, have literally a box, and create from the most imaginative and have the most fun with a cardboard box. However, most kids that are schooled, they need a million things to keep themselves occupied. Otherwise, they're bored.
Yeah, exactly. That was funny. You mentioned the rock thing. It was one of the little games I put on Create Connect group when I first started the group. Was take a coffee cup. It was like a little game to play at like break time. Take a coffee cup and what can you do with your coffee cup? It's the same kind of deal. It's like stretch your imagination and be as inventive and like fly it as you can. Like go out of the box and like think in ways that are really playful and that you don't usually think about, and it helps to as well if you're playing it with someone else as well. It creates a great connection with that person or the group of people. So it's a really fun exercise to do, and it's like you say, it's so simple. You can do it with a rock or anything that you find around you.
And you know what I love about it is, imagine if we just did that one theme for a year. If I was a school teacher and I just did that one thing, you know, because I started to play with that. I started to say poems that had rocks, or, you know, The Sorcerer and the Stone, right? That movie. Or, you know, think about all the different things. Or you think about the Earth. The planet Earth is a rock. They call it the rock. When you think of, you know, jewels and gems, you think, oh my goodness, like all these magical ones, the colors of them. You think about shapes, sizes. You could count with rocks. You could create these games. you could do hopscotch, you know, with a rock. There's so many amazing things. And if
build
you
a house
built
with
it,
rock.
it's books, right? That had, you know, the one and only you. That's a whole, you know, storybook that you could build around that. And what they did is they created these beautiful, unique little fishes, and they're all little painted stones. And then it's all about that. We are so unique, and all the different, you know, when I was a little girl, I was fascinated by rocks and stones and crystals. Like I had this magic this little treasure chest, and nobody could look inside my little treasure box, right? And it had all these, I was a rock collector, and I would just collect all these rocks because I loved rocks. I think they're mysterious. I think they're magical, and I think there's so much mystery to them. And yet there's people just overlook them because of their simplicity.
Yeah, well, they're full of history, right? They have the history of that they were part of something before, and they're made of, like, they're made of energy, and they're made of matter that comes from the earth, and so they hold history, and they hold energy. But they're so quiet. They don't, unless they're thrown and they hit something.
And they're the foundation. If you think about how we build buildings with rocks and stones, right? They have so many. You know, it's funny. I did a workshop, and I had this vase, this jar, and I put these rocks in, and these big stones in, and then I at first, actually, it's the reverse. I put all the sand in, and then I tried to put the big rocks in, and I couldn't fit it all in. But if you put the stones in first, the big boulders in first, and then you put the sand in, all the little grains fill around it, and it fills the whole jar. And what I was saying is that, like rocks, the foundation of our life, if you put the big important things in first, then you can fill in the little details. But if you fill your life with all the little insignificant things, the details that don't really matter, the big important things like virtues and values, character building, those things can't fit in, and they're essential to building our life. So, you know, even one of my analogies, or how I started my workshop, related to rocks. So it's just, how can you get creative, and just the concept of that one word and that one object, you could stretch it into a year's lesson plans with kids or with others, right?
Yeah, I love that visual of you in front of a classroom with your with your rocks and your sand and your container, and you know, you're showing them, okay, we're not going to fit, it doesn't fit, like, what are we going to do? And you start again, and it's great. It's really visual, and it's easy to understand, and it's very powerful. It's a very simple way of explaining a very fundamental and important thing about life.
It's funny. I got a standing ovation, and people were like clapping. It was it was the funniest thing, and they just loved that visual and that impact. Because, like you said, you can feel the magnitude of that when you fill your life with insignificant things, and then you don't have the importance thing, like, and we were putting words like love and compassion and, you know, health. Like, those are fundamentals. If you fill your life up with things that don't really matter, you know, details of your life that aren't really significant, to me, health is your wealth. So that is number one. It doesn't matter what you have. If health isn't one of the main foundations put in that jar, you're at risk of not having a good quality of life. So the other things too, right? Really simplifying and finding out, what are those key factors? What are the real fundamentals that we need to fill our life with up first?
Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely goes hand in hand with your creativity as an individual. Right. I think it's very closely related. For me, that's how I understand creativity. Is it's very closely related to your spirit, and it's the link between your subconscious mind and your conscious mind. And when you're bringing your ideas and your imagination and your subconscious mind out of your body into whichever translation you want, that process is creativity for me. So it's like a very closely related to who you are, and yeah, it's a very fascinating subject.
You know what I have to share with you, because I'm a creator, right? So my mind just naturally goes that way. But I had one of my students in grade 5, 6. She came up to me and we were doing these amazing art lessons. And she said, Miss Valier, and she goes, you know, I have something to say to you. When we create and we're doing this kind of art, this is when we're most like God, because God created all of us. He's our creator. And when we are creating, we are most like him. And I was like, boom, like, I was like, this is so profound. Like, you nailed it. And I think that's why you think of poets and you think of musicians and you think of artists, because we're tapping into something that is connected to that universal source, that that higher self, because we are creators. And like, you know, whatever you want to call it, but to me, God, energy is creation. So when we tap into the creation piece of energy, we tap into and align with that source. And that's where I think there's a lot of people, even when we don't give tribute to the arts in school, or, you know, we don't value the arts, you know, that's a part of us, that higher self, that the layers of the magnitude of what we could expand into is shut down, is snuffed out when we go into all the details on the left side of the brain too much.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that until now, society hasn't really, it does consider that art as important, but there's so many cases in my personal life as an artist and my journey where I've noticed that people don't understand the true value of art, or not art, of creativity, and as it is expressed through the arts. And it shows that exactly what you just said, that it's a reflection of the society's suppression of that as an important part of who they are in a sense. You know, like if someone hasn't understood that, that's one, really sad, but it's also that, you know, what do they actually value in themselves and in life in general, if that is what they're suppressing, and if that is what they're not understanding. You know, there's an interesting discussion to be had there, I think.
Well, I think it keeps us small, right? And when we tap into our creativity, it's that expandedness. It's like it takes us into connecting with one another, right? Because you think all ages connect with a piece of artwork or a piece of music. Just play music and you'll see birds dancing, bopping their head. You'll see elephants. You'll see babies. You'll see elders. You'll see Alzheimer's, right? Come out and awaken. There is something about the arts, poetry. People will cry when they hear it. They see a piece of artwork and they're moved. So there's something that moves us. And if we imagine, think about Disney, right? Talk about creativity. He's one of my favorite examples.
Totally.
Take out all the movies, all the fantasy, all the songs, the music, the drawings that were created so that those could come to life, his vision. Think about the amusement parks that people go and visit, and the imagination and creativity. And could you imagine our whole life not having just one person, Walt Disney, snuffed out, right? Like his light. So that's what I champion other people too. My purpose and passion is about helping every child, every person, every man, woman, youth in the planet, help them realize their divine design, help them understand their jewels, their gems, and help them to shine their brightest self. Because imagine if all of us were walking around and you thought about every star in the sky and they were dark. And then all of a sudden they went and they were shining brightly. But imagine that every person on the planet, like every person like Disney, if they could, he stood into his genius and he came and emerged into that. But imagine if every one of us, because we all have that in us.
Yeah.
Could you imagine how we could transform this world and how magical and whimsical this world could be?
Amazing. Yeah. And that brings me to if you can, in a few minutes, in like not too long, because we're actually like taken already about half an hour. Tell us about the NASA testing that George Land did, and his findings about creativity and genius in youth. I think it's a significant project to talk about.
Well, to me, it's what I start with, right? When I'm thinking about anything, I think of George Land's NASA study. And so what they did is they were looking for geniuses in NASA, and they decided to create a test that could actually figure out, and attract more people into NASA to be these geniuses to help, expand in the world of exploration. So as they did, they realized that the test that they had come up with was easy enough for 4 and 5-year-olds to do. And so they found 1,600 4 and 5-year-olds. They tested them. And what they came up with, and you know this answer, but they came up with 98% of them at genius level, which was shocking. Like, they did not anticipate that many 4 and 5-year-olds were going to test at genius capacity. And when they tested them at age 10, the results dropped dramatically to 30%.
And this is the same group study?
Same group study.
Same study.
They're just 10 years old now, 1,600 kids. This is a longitudinal study. So then they tested them at 15, and they were down to 12%. And when they tested them at age 30, they were down to 2%. 2%. And so George Land had said that on a TED Talk, this was the most important work he had done in his life to date. And when you think about that, when I brought this into the classroom, kids have said, well, why aren't we doing something different in schools then?
Totally good question.
Like a really important study that we should be, basing some new pathways to learning. And I said, bingo, like exactly.
Yeah.
The problem is that schools have been built these structures, and we have paradigms and people and habits and routines in place and tools and resources that we've invested so much in that it's sometimes even easy to just dismiss these facts and results, even though when we know that they're not to our benefit. And the example I said to one of the girls, I said, if I had a magic wand, what would you change about the education system? And she said, more freedom. So I said, what this makes me think of is, I said, imagine a bird. So if you took a bird and you tested 1,600 birds and how they could fly as newborn birds, baby birds. And then you tested them, you put them in a cage, and you taught them everything that they needed to know about flying. They're in this cage and they're learning everything they need to know. There's a big master bird there, and he's teaching them everything about flying. But they're not in the cage to fly. And then you test them again. You let them fly, at 10 years of age. And they're not very good flyers now. Only.
Oh, you're freezing. You're frozen.
And then you keep them, you put them back in the cage, and you teach them more and more and more about flying. And then by 30, these parrots, they can't fly. None of them can fly anymore. And you wonder why. You know, it's the system. Learning doesn't have to happen in 4 walls, and learning doesn't. Like, the world is our classroom, and that's what I'm doing with my work right now currently is in this pandemic, right? I'm teaching people that, number 1, we're all teachers. Number 2, we're all students. We're all learning. And everything can be a teaching tool, and everything can equal to learning.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic what you're doing. Seriously. So I'm moving now into your programs a little bit more now. Tell us about, why is storytelling so important as a vehicle for your education? And what are some of the characters that you have created to help and enhance your teaching methods?
Well, again, like creativity, and like I was saying with music speaks to all of us. So Joseph Campbell was one of the ones that really prompted my interest and passion in storytelling, is because he found out that, when he studied people across time, age, and race, everybody had a hero's journey story. And so it's one thing that we all connect to. And so when I learned that, I also learned through my education that we retain 95% of content if it's told to us in a story. And we only retain 5 to 10% of facts and information. So I'm thinking, okay, do I want my students to remember this or not remember it? So if I want them to remember it, I better find a way to tell them the story. And if I don't want them to remember, I'll fill them up with facts and information. So again, my whole goal is teaching equals learning. So I started to realize, okay, that's a really important fact that I'm going to build into everything that I do. The other thing is that children learn best. We all learn best by teaching. When we're the passive listeners, we only learn 5 to 10% again. When we teach it to others, we retain and learn 90 to 95%. So part of the other piece was storytelling. And the other part was allowing my students to teach it to others. And so what ended up coming is that I have these little characters that I get to be creative. So I show up at the classroom having fun and being creative, and it's fun for me, so it's fun for them. But this is Monster, and every child has a stuffy, is what I started to realize. Every child. And so what happens is the learning didn't just happen at school. That learning started to happen at home. And I had their parents saying, wow, my gosh, masterclass, my child every day plays masterclass, and they have their stuffies and they're doing their master messages, and they're teaching me, and they're teaching their siblings, and they're teaching the dog. And I thought, there you go, right? They're retaining it. They're going home and they're teaching it. And I also did something called pair and share. So they had to find a buddy. And if you were holding the stuffy, you were the speaker. And if I gave it to you, Charlotte, you were holding the stuffy, you were the speaker. And we would start to tell what's the master message of Monster. And Monster, Monster's master message was today he was a little bit down. And he didn't start off eating his best, food choices. And so the message is all around, eating healthy, because eating healthy helps us to go, grow, and glow. But Monster wasn't making those good choices. He was eating his sugar pops, and he was chocolate bar all the way to school, and he was not very good, in a good place when he showed up. So it becomes this master message, and they get to start to tell stories. And for some reason, it gives them comfort. So the other thing is when you start to ask a child to tell you something, they won't. But if you make it about Monster, how is Monster feeling? They'll tell you a big, long story. But if you say, how are you feeling? Fine. You get one-word answers. So it prompts them to, number one, share with one another. Number two, get creative. Number three, it's like a security blanket. And number four, they're teaching. It stumbled upon me. It wasn't something that I learned from anywhere else. I started to, mind map all this information and start to put it together and then call it and title it and package it as Kindergarten Masterclass.
Yeah, and your little names, the little phrases that you have, like what you just said, the Monster message and
Master teacher. Right? Yeah. Master teacher, Monster, master message. And this is master teacher Eugenius, his favorite master teacher is, of course, Einstein, because let's face it. And he's got the cutest little boots and shoes. Yeah, totally. Einstein teaches us the importance of our genius, and Eugenius is his name. We call him Eugenius, and he helps children realize that everybody has a genius. And this is Oliver the Dream Builder, and Oliver teaches us how to use our powerful imagination and to daydream to go from from anxiety to calm, right? From peaceful to calm. And he's our mental health champion. So I say, Oliver sees the world through rose-colored glasses. He doesn't see it the way it is. He imagines it as it could be. So he uses his powerful imagination. And then we have Coach Wolfie, formerly known as the Big Bad Wolf, and you can see he used to have a big bad attitude, but we helped him become the best Coach Wolfie he could be, and that was because of his bestie, Oliver, who showed him not who he was, but who he could be. So they all have stories. They're all part of Kindergarten Masterclass, and I use it adult training too, because let's face it, it's fun.
It is fun. It's like, doesn't matter what age you are, you can still have an imaginative way of teaching. And it's like, it's so much more memorable when you are interactive and you're having fun and there's a story. It's seriously like, you're really doing a great, you have a great format that you've designed and created with all these characters. It's fantastic.
It's a story map, and you remember stories, and that's why you have a visual pictorial of it's like a snapshot.
Yeah. So tell us about the Compass of Life program and the Lessons for Life cards, which is part of that, I would say, and your Awaken Your Inner Hero book. Those are the three projects that came to my attention.
Yeah, lots, right? So basically the Compass of Life is my compass points, and that's my roadmap. So I teach the children that, you know, before Monster can come to class, he's got to be able to do two things. He has to, number one, know how to be still, because we have to be still to be able to listen to learn. Okay. So you to be still for 10 seconds, or learn how to do that through calming their body, right? So it's about mindfulness, training ourselves to pay more attention to that. So being still helps everybody to be successful. And number two is a positive attitude, because if you've got a negative attitude, nothing is going to come in. So the first compass point for the Compass of Life is A for attitude. B is our behavior. So how do you behave? Because when we create behaviors and beliefs and habits, we actually start to become that. So if you think about the Big Bad Wolf, he was used to being in the behavior of the Big Bad Wolf until he started to make different choices. And when he changed his attitude from negative attitude to positive, and he started to change his beliefs and his habits and his behaviors, that's when he started to live and step into Coach Wolfie. So we have to change our behavior, because our behavior changes what our belief is about ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
And C is choices. So is this behavior or thought or feeling going to make my life better, worse, or the same? So again, we always have a choice, and the choice is in the now. So I teach them, you know, through the basically it's the traffic light. So stop, what do you need to stop doing? What do you need to start doing is the green light, and continue doing is the yellow light, right? And then we went into D, discover your diamonds within. And that's all about this deep dive into discovering the truth of who you are and really what your jewels, gems, and gifts are. And then the number 5 is emotions, which is energy emotion. So if I show up in the world, Bad Wolf, how is life going to mirror me? They're going to show up with that same energy. So it's about managing our emotions and understanding our emotions. And so energy and motion. So if we're mostly happy, we're going to feel happy, and more happy things are going to come into our experience. But when something throws us off, like makes us sad or anger, pay attention, because that's the body letting you know that something doesn't feel right. And that's why I say to the kids, I want you to feel mostly in the green zone, which is right here. Because if you're always in that red zone, you won't even know when you're out of alignment. If you're always sick, for example, like in the yellow zone, or frustrated, how do you know what it feels like to be happy and healthy? And if you're mostly happy and healthy and you get sick, now your body's going, oh, something's off. But if you're always angry, you don't know when you can't listen to your body, your mind, or be in tune. Something feels off here. So I teach them that's your body letting you know that there's something off, that, you know, that friend is really not a very good friend if you don't feel very good when you're around them every single time. So it's a lot of important information, and it teaches them that, you know, you're normal, you're healthy. You don't want to feel happy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and somebody died and you still feel happy. That's not saying you have a healthy, normal heart, right? Like, you want to be able to feel and know that, yes, I feel pain, I feel frustrated, I feel anger, I feel sadness, I feel joy. Right?
But it's understanding what that communication is between your body and you, and your mind. So it's basically establishing a connection between your heart and your mind. It's a very fundamental pathway to nurture and create, because throughout your whole life that is going to be imperative to understand if you want to get the best out of your life and become, you know, your fullest potential. So,
and have healthy relationships. If you're with somebody who's always beating you down, and you had let's say a parent always beating you down, that's your norm. Well, that shouldn't be your normal. Me, I'm mostly happy. So when somebody mistreats me or says something and throws me off, that alerts me. And that says, that doesn't feel right. I'm going to investigate this.
Yeah.
And if
it's giving you alarm bells.
Pardon?
And sorry, say that again.
I said, and if that happens all the time, that's letting me know I don't want to be in this relationship anymore, because, you know, you're bringing out the worst in me, and that's not someone I want to be in a relationship with or even in work with. Right? So if I'm constantly, my work is constantly putting me out of alignment, it's also taking me out of flow state. And then I'm not going to have the best quality of life and reach my potential.
Yeah, exactly. So all of that was your curriculum, if you like, your structure to teach the Compass of Life. That's the program, right?
Yeah. So
the Lessons for Life cards, they are a set of cards that you use to teach people about who they are, right?
It's because a lot of times we try to figure out those stories and figure out that information through our head. And we really dissect it, and we start building it from our left brain. Well, these Lesson for Life cards, you went through the experience. They take you from they take you right to your heart very quickly, and it's fast moving, and you can't overthink it. So it's really happens intuitively, and it happens with the right side of the brain and your heart intelligence. And so it really pinpoints and gives you a lot of clarity. And even if you've been searching kind of for a while, it brings everything really clear up to the surface. So they're really powerful, impactful, and they give you like a visual mission statement per se, and a snapshot of what's really important in your life. So it gives you a lot of clarity.
And so you start off by pulling a card like you did at the beginning of our session today, and from that point you start asking questions. So you set the scene of the energy of that moment, and then we go into the details, and then you're associating yourself with a spirit animal and the attributes of that animal and so on. And it's fantastic. It's a real it's a very quick way, like you said, and the fact that you don't have time to think is one thing that I really liked. You know, you're not sitting there laboriously talking to a psychologist or, like, you know, trying to really like labor this out. It's very instantaneous, and your questions are so and clear, and you have to you have to come up with the answers so far, so you've no choice than to use your instinct and your intuition to say the first thing that comes into your head, and that is usually what the intuition speaking. So it's a really well designed process, and it's fun and it's visual, you know, with all of the symbols and the characters that we come up with during that session.
What's amazing with it is after it becomes your teaching tool. So you get to use this powerful lesson card for life to introduce yourself, to expand things that are really important and powerful from you, you could segue it out and really build upon them. And there's so much powerful information in each segment, but it really gives people a quick, at a glance, holistic view of who you are. And there's so much fun, and there's a lot of rich, deep dive conversations when I get excited about doing them with other people, because I know it's going to take me from superficial conversations into getting to know them really.
Yeah, really deeply. And that was the one thing I was going to refer to, actually, but you just talked about it, was how that can start off a conversation. It's like, what we're saying, it's like visual speed dating or something.
Story starters, yeah, exactly. Visual speed dating. It's like we should have these like around the table conversations, like speed dating.
It's really funny.
Get their lesson for life and then go around the table and speed date.
You can find your match.
Or entrepreneurship, right? Like you can find who you want on your team. Like,
yeah, exactly. Your teammate and you're the team for whatever projects or missions you have to accomplish or you want to accomplish. So the last thing, the awaken your hero. What is that? This is like a fantastic opportunity for youth all over the world, actually, to bear their hero to the world and bring themselves out of the shadows. Tell us about that.
It really is great. And my journey, it hasn't happened overnight, right? There's been a process of awakening my inner hero, about doing all this hero work, and one thing led to another. Like, this is 15 years of my life's body of work coming into form. And then basically what happened is I was part of a book called Dreaming Big, Being Bold, and I connected with another dream builder, Susan Howson, and Jenny Fitz. And we all had these big dreams, and we were in this book with Paula Morand and Victoria Craig, and they basically created this concept to bring us together. And we started to realize that our life's body of work overlapped and paralleled. So we came together and said, listen, let's create this book and let's help children around Canada come together and really find a community and topics that they are connected to. Because a lot of times you can feel like you're alone in the world when you are a change agent, or you're, until you and I found each other, we were like so excited, because you can sometimes feel like you're on this lone ranger's, journey, this pioneering of this life, this road less traveled. We shared about that. And I know kids are feeling like that, these amazing kids that are change agents, and they don't have other kids to connect with. So we created this book, and there's 50 youth heroes across Canada. Some of them were fully on their path, like already won a Nobel Peace Prize, working with the United Nations, and some were just awakening. But what we did at the back that was really fun, and how we structured the book, is that every child had to have a system, because as you read, everybody's chapter is unique, but the system they have to answer is exactly the same. So then you start to ask yourself, what's my I am statement? And what's the dream in my heart? Because we ask the kids, what's your I am statement? What's the dream in your heart? What's your superpower? How does your voice matter? Who are your heroes? What's your advice to others? Right. Paragraphs all related to those. And so as you keep reading all 50 of them, you start to ask yourself the same questions, and it really does awaken your inner hero. Like, I've asked so many people, what's your superpower? And they're like a doe in headlights.
I don't know.
No clue. I'm thinking, how do we make it all the way through school, education, be 30, 40, 50 years old, and we don't know our superpowers? But yet I say, when I ask anybody, what's fish's superpower? They easily can say, oh, swimming. Or what's bird's superpower? Oh, flying. I'm like, okay, well, what's your superpower?
That's really sad.
No. Like, awful. Yeah. Like, you could fail that test in habitats for easily if you didn't know fish's superpower. And how did you make it through the whole school system and you don't know your superpower?
Yeah, there's something wrong with our school system.
George Land, right? George Land's genius of how we get dumber as we go through the school. I say to my kindergartens, you're the 90%, 98% genius. I'm the 2%.
I bet I love that.
Me and the EC teacher, me and Mrs. Duffus, we're the 2%. You guys are the 98. You got to teach us. We're not the smart ones in the room.
Yeah, exactly. So you have a book too that's coming out soon, aren't you? Isn't that what I saw on your website? You're applying. You're like open the door for another 50 heroes
around the world.
Right?
This was just around Canada.
Right.
So we wanted a little bit of a break because it was a lot of work to bring all those kids, all those stories, and edit them and then do a proper job promoting them and, edifying them and then having the launch party. So now.
Oh, you're frozen again. Come back. And now what?
And now we're looking for youth heroes around the world. So that's even a bigger scale. But it's definitely something we have that we're working towards, but we're not sure yet the date or time of when that is all going to come. But we're still taking amazing kids in and looking at their profiles and still inviting them to send their applications to the website. So yeah, super excited.
Great. Cool. So I'll drop that link in the post that when I upload this video. I'll put that link, and I'll put a link to your the Compass of Life. That
so they could go to www.hero-intelligence.com, or if they want to grow their hero online, we have our online quest, and that is quest.growyourhero.com. So those are two ways that if you want to get started on this process and really start to live your best life and step into the potential of who you possibly can be, those are two ways you can do it.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, that's pretty much tied up everything. We're going to send you we're going to display all the links where you can contact Tammy associated with this video. So don't worry about that. They'll be there for you to click and discover. And any last words?
You know what? I always end it with the hero in me sees the hero in all of you. And I say, we are the masters of our destiny. We are the authors of our life. And we have three choices. We could pick up that hero pen and write from that point of perspective. We can pick up the victim pen and be.
You froze. Pick up the second one. You froze just after the second one.
Oh, sorry. There's three pens that we can pick up in our life, right? Our hero, our victim, or our villain. And so we can, want to get back at people and be vengeful. We could, be the victim and always look for excuses to not do what we need to do and always look at the problem. Or we
not take responsibility for your life.
Absolutely. Or we could pick up that pen and decide, you know what? I'm going to be the solution seeker, and I'm going to start to see through the lens of my hero, how this is happening for me, not to me, and how it's going to grow my muscles, how it's going to help me to learn and grow into the best that I can be. Because let's face it, the easy stuff doesn't push us to grow. It's the hard stuff that really challenges us to step into becoming a bigger and better version of ourselves.
Exactly. And that is a fantastic point to end, because it's perfect. It sits perfectly in this time that we're living right now. Which one are you? The villain, the victim, or the victor? Is that what you said? The hero, yeah, the hero. And are you sitting in this space of uncertainty thinking, oh, this is really bad. I don't know what to do. I'm going to wait until they lifted the lockdown to go back to my job, blah, blah, blah. Or are you going to redesign your life, take the bull by the horns, and see what you can create out of this space, and really tap into who you are and the possibilities of what you could do with your hero and your genius from now, and not wait for life to rearrange itself and provide you the perfect incubator for, it's not going to happen. It's never perfect.
No.
you got to act in your hero and in your genius every day, and see and be recreating everything from moment to moment. And this is a perfect time to really tap into that, and really discover who you are if you don't already know.
You have to do it alone, right, Charlotte?
Yep.
You don't have to do it alone. Heroes united, right? Everybody coming together, leveraging each other's gifts, genius, superpowers.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about, you know, that when you come together, it's not a competition, it's about coming together as one.
Totally. And you said something earlier, we were talking about the stars in the sky, and I just thought, you know, exactly that it's so important, the community element and the community aspect of becoming greater, and like leveling up your game, and leveling up who you become, who you want to become, and who you are. You do that in support with other people around you to support you in that. And imagine if there was you over there and me over here, and we were both shining our brightest. When we came together, there was double the light coming out of us into the universe. Imagine when there's a whole group of people like all living out of their genius and all living their passions. That light is going to be so powerful and so bright. We're going to light up the whole sky to see Saturn from here, you know, like it's so powerful when you think about it that way. And so, yeah, think you're not on your own. It's a journey to be shared, and that's where storytelling comes in too. So let's wrap it up. Thank you so much, Tammy. It's been wonderful discussing your passion and your life's work. And I wish you all the best into the future, and hopefully we'll collaborate on some amazing projects together. I'd love that, and share our creativity with everyone we can.
You're a bright star, that's for sure, Charlotte. And right from the first minute I met you, you lit up my world. Like your energy, your spontaneity, your creativity, your light, your genuine, and the way you operate from your heart compass, your moral compass, you feel that authenticity, that truth, the integrity just shines out of you. And that's what attracted my light to your light. So thank you for this wonderful platform, for the interview, for the incredible questions you asked. And yeah, I'm excited to see where we're going.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent. All right, well, let's leave it at that, and have an amazing day, everyone, after watching this. I hope you feel inspired. All right, so on to the next one. Well, we're going to be interviewing new people every week. So if you feel like this is a spot that you want, contact me, and we could set something up and have a great chat and share your passion with the world like Tammy just did. All right, so I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.